I always say that Fernet Branca is like the truth. Nobody likes the truth. But once you get the truth, you just want the truth. Once you you upgrade yourself to a self-level conscious of appreciation, you either stay at the level or you grow, but you don't go back.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Decoding Cocktails podcast. I'm your host, Chris LeBeau. At the ripe age of 38, I left my former career behind and joined the hospitality industry. Since then, I've been on a rapid journey of learning, meeting all sorts of great people, and this podcast is my chance to bring you along with me, whether I'm interviewing somebody that works in the industry, another enthusiast, or occasionally stepping back to share what I'm working on or my thoughts. I'm so glad you're here, and so with that aside, let's get into today's episode. What's happening, everybody? Welcome back for another episode of Decoding Cocktails. I am Chris LeBeau. This is a fun episode we have in store for you today, so I'm excited for you to get to hear this one. But before I get into that, with the holiday season upon us, I had an email come in from a former student in class the other day, and I wanted to share what I shared with them. So it was an inquiry about equipment for the home bar. And this woman wanted to know about buying stuff for what should she get for her husband. She said, hey, I already have this all this various gear that my husband has purchased through some basic online set. Will this work? Do I need something else? You know, using great quality equipment is really nice. It's not wholly imperative, though. So, you know, in class when I teach, we use pint glasses. So you can use a pint glass. You can use a fancier Japanese-style mixing glass if you want. Some of the basic cobbler shakers, which kind of are those three-piece shakers that come in a lot of the basic online sets, I don't think are great, but will they work? Yes. The only issue I run into is sometimes they end up kind of fusing shut. So that's why a lot of times I recommend using what's called more of a tin-on-tin or a Boston shaker. The two pieces of equipment that feel pretty important for the average cocktail maker that I kind of wanted to share with you guys is I feel like having a jigger that you are very comfortable using is important. So all sorts of jiggers exist. As long as you have something you are comfortable measuring with and know the volume of it, I recommend the OXO Good Grips one. You'll see at my page at decodingcocktails.com/gear. I also think it's very useful to have a great bar spoon. A lot of the basic ones that come out there with basic kits are not wound very tightly, which make them kind of awkward to hold. And frankly, if you're going to stir more than one cocktail, they're actually even quite painful to use. So I highly recommend those as two kind of more essential items. Obviously, buy whatever you want for people, use whatever you want, but those are two suggestions I have. My guest today is Nicola Olianas. He is the global brand ambassador for Fratelli Branca, which owns iconic brands like Fernet Branca, Carpano, Antica, and Punta Mess, amongst many others. His role is really just to introduce and create as many believers in their products as possible, and does this through a variety of tasting, seminars, and talks around the world. He has worked for the company since 2010 and lives in Milan, which is the home to the distillery. His passion for this industry began very early. His father owned a bar, so he was around it all the time, and began his own career in the bar world around the age of 17, and kind of tagged between that and coffee. And just before joining Branca, he worked for San Pellegrino for 5 years. I came to be aware of Nicola this year at Tales of the Cocktail in New Orleans. He was giving a seminar, and having done this as much as he has, his not only his knowledge of the product, but his control of that room in a great way made him seem like a very compelling person. And so I was delighted when he agreed to talk. And so that's kind of that, to some of the things we talk about as well here and there on the podcast. Getting back to the fact that so much of alcohol has its roots in medicine, I found it fascinating that you could buy Fernet Branca in pharmacies in Italy until the 1940s, because in addition to basic things like digestion, cholera was something. So when the cholera epidemic was happening in Italy, Fernet was at times used to help kind of stimulate the appetite for people who were, dehydrated and, basically dying. So I think that's really a fascinating reminder of the roots of where all this stuff comes from. Two other little things I wanted to talk about. One, this X factor that sometimes comes up with cooking, and I think with cocktails or just hospitality, is this thing of love. And Nicola says at one point when he's talking about his grandmother's green beans, this idea that she cooked with love, and that we don't cook something, we cook for somebody. And it really is, when you're cooking something, when you're making a drink, it will hopefully work. You don't know that it will, but it is that time invested in something that is naturally an imperfect thing, but done with care and attention is important. So as we all, I'm sure, always look for other ways to connect with people in our lives, I think this is a very valuable reminder. The other thing I wanted to talk about was talking about Carpano, this idea that, vermouth, Carpano is by many intents and purposes the first vermouth that existed. And so this product has been around for hundreds of years. And so Nicola takes time to talk about early on the idea between luxury and excellence, and that things like Branca, but also these vermouths, which we, I think intuitively in this culture, think of for martinis and Manhattans, that, he's quick to say, this is excellence in a bottle. So no need to overcomplicate it. Drink it on its own. Drink it with some ice. Drink it with some club soda. That these are things that have been crafted and honed for hundreds of years. And so being excellence in a bottle, we don't have to do something fancy to it, quote unquote, in order to make it worthwhile. Just sit down and enjoy it. If you have trouble finding Fernet Branca, we need to work on your internet skills, but look them up, Fernet Branca. You can find them on social or on their website. I will have links to that. When it comes to Nicola, his Instagram handle is _Nick, N-I-C, Olianas, O-L-I-A-N-A-S _. Again, this will be linked to in the show notes as well, but give him a follow as well. So that's what I've got for you guys today. Enjoy this conversation. Nicola, thanks so much for taking some time to chat today. I really appreciate it.
All my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
So a place that I always love to start with questions is there a moment, and, growing up in Italy, it might start early, but is there a moment you remember falling in love with this industry or deciding you wanted to work in it?
Well, it's interesting that you asked me this, because I was born in this industry. My father opened a bar when I was like 5. So I kind of grew up. I still remember my father putting 3 chairs together so I could fall asleep while he was closing the bar down. I spent all my life in the bar, just watching people consuming this alcoholic beverage that I wasn't allowed even to touch. So people getting a coffee and then getting a mazza caffè, which was the amaro after the coffee. People having a small aperitivo before going to work, and then after work coming back to the bar. So that was it was my life. It was my environment. And from that, I also learned from my father and the people working in this bar how to deal with different people, and how interesting it was to have the whole world of people coming to you. Like the demographic, the diversity of people coming to the bar was amazing. It was like a social place. So I was intrigued by that. And it was like my safe spot. It was my comfort zone was actually in the bar. So this is where I grew up. And then I started doing the first summer work in the north of Italy, working as a washing up guy. I was cleaner, glass collector. And then eventually when I was 17, started to making my first drinks. And then moved to England, where I managed a bar for 3.5 years. It was a Jamaican Caribbean bar. So I kind of like spent my whole life within this industry, and now I kind of like felt that all this knowledge was interesting to have, like using this knowledge for a company like for Fratelli Branca, so to help them to understand the industry. In a way, I was the guy in the beginning for this company, was talking and speaking the same language of the industry, so the company could communicate better to the industry, and the industry could like really raise the like requests to the company. So I was a middleman. This is what I still am today.
I got it. I follow. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, no, and you're right. That's a fun early start that certainly helps give you a very long perspective on that. Because you grew up in a bar and grew up Italian, one of the things I also found interesting that I don't know if you have some thoughts for people listening, but Branca has this vision of bringing the whole world the excellence, passion, and beauty of doing things the Italian way. So if you were going to suggest, like, having spent time in America and in many corners of the globe, what are some ways that people might more do things the Italian way in their life?
Well, to say that, we have to clarify what we mean by Italian excellence. And to understand that, we have to understand which is the difference between luxury and excellence. This is something that I always said. Luxury is when you have a very good product, but the scarcity make it very expensive and only for few people. Excellence is when you have a very good product, but you standardize the process of making it and making it available, so it's more available to many people. This is the excellence. This is what we do. Is that when you standardize a process or make something easy and approachable, but still maintaining the high standard quality of the product itself. This is what we think Italian excellence is and means to us. And this is a process we are still on today in our company after almost 200 years. We haven't finished on pursuing the path of making our product available to as many people as possible, maintaining the high standard of quality within the products. So this is what I mean. And Branca wasn't my first Italian company experience. I used to work for San Pellegrino before Branca, and it was the Italian way of life, providing high standard quality water and brand and service and quality to as many restaurants as possible, and to reaching as many people as possible with a high standard quality water. So that was the thing that I feel we have to pursue, maintaining the quality, and the quality is not only within the product, it's how you present the product, the effort of advertising the product, the effort to making people understanding the product. That is also quality. You can do that with quality. So this is what we do.
I think, having spent some time in Milan and in the north, I certainly agree that, when people are looking for the magic behind the Italian kitchen, there's obviously this history and passion there, but it's really this commitment to great ingredients that is more of a recent rediscovery in places like the US, with food, with drink. And so, yeah, that kind of that reminder that we often are looking for the shortcut or the simple ingredient that we can, the little packet of seasoning that will make the dish perfect, as opposed to using the right sauce, the right pasta in the first place.
Yeah, I see you there, but let me break an arrow in favor of this as well. It's always a matter of what you have available and what you have access to and what you know. I actually see a great example especially in the hospitality environment in the US, with the restaurants, with food and cocktails, of people really making an effort and making research on the better way of doing things. Don't just stop on the first available good or item to the market, but going and dig on a better quality, and try to local support the market by just by local food. I can see that happening. For us, was something normal because this is the only thing we had available. So local food was the only thing we had available. So that's what we were sourcing, the local food, because we didn't have like big supermarket or big chain supplying with foreign food, or food supply from different markets. So there was something common. Don't take me wrong, in Italy we do good things, but we also have mainstream approach, and sometimes you find that because the market has driven people to make that choices because we're easier to pursue. There is a coming back on that. We are being people are re-educating consumer to have that type of approach and type of palate to understand the quality of it. So it's really like a thing. What makes the difference is love. We have to always remember that you never cook something, but you cook for somebody. You never make a drink, but you make a drink for somebody. So that makes what makes the difference. The food that my grandmother used to make was good because she was cooking for me. And she was taking time to do it. I will always make an example. She used to make fantastic green beans. I never tried to. Always try to understand the secret of those like green beans. And the secret was that she used to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get the best green beans, the fresh ones. She wouldn't go at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon when the leftover was there. And then she was cooking them slowly using good olive oil and good garlic. So she cared about every passage of that. And I can see that happen today. Like working in the restaurant environment is hard because you have to wake up early. It's not that you start when you open your bar or you open your restaurant. The job starts before. You're taking care of your customer way before they actually walking into your bar or into your restaurant. And then the same as my grandmother used to do. She used to take care and think about me way before the lunch, day before I was going there for lunch. She was thinking what to cook, and she was thinking what I like and how I like to cook. So it's caring, I think, is one of the secret. We have to care of that. I had a great example, like back in the day. I was in Austin and I had a fantastic meal by an American chef that used to live in Rome for 8 years. I had like Italian cooking, Italian dishes, and I was like a little bit skeptical, let me admit that. And instead I had some of the best reinterpretation of Italian food that I ever had in my life ever. And one of the lessons that I learned from this guy was that, when you try to take like an original dish, you don't have to jeopardize the taste. You don't have to like make a revolution on the dish. You just have to I just have to repropose what are the taste and the flavors of your grandmother's dish, but they have to be presented by a chef. Simple as that. So that was a great signal for me, and understanding that this is what about is that maintaining the original flavor intact. Same as for Fernet, we maintain the original recipe, the original flavors, but we are commercializing that as a product for people. So maintaining the standard of quality high, that's what people are expecting. But we don't jeopardize the whole idea that was behind Fernet Branca, the whole idea that was behind our product. We maintain that intact. We preserve that. We protect that, because I think that our consumer and people need that guarantee of the quality to be protected and preserved.
I love the story of love conveyed through green beans at 6 a.m. rather than
Yes.
than 2 p.m. That's great.
Makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And I can see young chef doing that, walking to market to choose the right ingredient, and be selective on what they're gonna cook and what they're gonna have on their kitchen, which is a mix between availability, so they can replicate that dish, but also quality, and they don't make compromise of that.
Yeah. So I'd like to talk about Branca in a moment, but first, as kind of a setting the table for people who might need the relation a little bit. So Fernet, to my understanding, Nicola, is kind of a subcategory of Amari. So, more similar to, but still different than, whether it's an Averna or Nonino or Montenegro. So compared to Amari, do you mind talking about what some of the more typical differences are between that and a Fernet, and then we'll dive into Branca, of course.
Well, Fernet, first of all, is not a subcategory, but actually was the category where everything started from.
Okay.
Anyway, that we're talking about like Amarissimi, like a real, everything starts from bitters, tinctures. Fernet was the first step into a massive change into the category. So how do I take a medicinal and make it taste good so people can drink it neat? That was the milestone. Like that was the big step into the market, because everything was born as a remedy. People were using herb and spice to cure themselves, but they were like undrinkable, unapproachable. They had no palate at all, you know. And how do you make that? So Fernet Branca was one of the first, like Amaros, and the first bitter in the market that people could also enjoy as a leisure product, to enjoy, to drink and sip, still maintaining the characteristic of a remedy. You know, it was incredible how you could still buy a bottle of Fernet Branca in pharmacies in the 1940s, 1950s in Italy. And the US, by the 1920s, we were advertising Fernet Branca as an aperitivo and digestivo. So it was like, you know, it was incredible. That was what amazed me the most about Fernet. So Fernet sets its own category. You know, if we have to divide the category by metrological category, Amaros are all those products that have between 30 grams and 100 grams of sugar per liter. So infused of herb and spices, alcoholic infused, hydroalcoholic infused, whatever, you know, everybody uses his own methods. These are pure grain alcohol base, grappa base, so eau de vie de vigne base, and so forth. Then you have like bitter liqueurs. Okay, what we have in the market today mainly are bitter liqueurs. So Amari by category, by definition, but they are liqueurs as a metrological category, because they have anything between 100 grams and 300 grams of sugar per liter, that we can define them as a liqueurs. They are bitter liqueurs, Amaro liqueurs, but they are liqueurs. And then you have the cremes, you know, creme de cassis, creme de cacao, creme de menthe, like everything between 300 and over. Fernets, Fernet Branca specifically, is below 30 grams of sugar per liter. So there is this big difference. So you kind of like, how do you create something that has no sugar at all? Which is like, sugar is a modifier, it's also a preservative. So it preserves the flavors, but also modify and stabilize the recipe. How you create something that is good and approachable while having no sugar at all. So that is the technique. You know, this is where the magic comes, when you manage to create something like that. And it's a matter of balance. So finding the right balance between all the ingredients, and let the ingredients sit and merge together. Some Amaris from bitters, actually they age in oak barrels for their purpose. So you don't have an overcoming flavor from one spice or one herb toward the other, but you have like a whole spectrum of flavor, but really merging together in one whole drinking experience. That's what you have. So it's not like a subcategory, I would say. This is a category on its own, honestly.
Got it. Okay, sure. No, it's that's fair. And less than 30 grams of sugar. Yeah, for something that clocks in at is Fernet 50% ABV, is that correct?
Fernet is 39
39
ABV.
Oops.
Yeah, 39 ABV. It started from a really higher ABV. The better, I mean, as I said, the process of excellence is also the process of availability and approachability. So the more we went into the time, the more research that we make, we managed to create the same recipe, the same product, lowering down the alcohol content. So we tried to get more herb and spices quality, the infusions, rather than just alcohol. So this is one of the process, like starting from like a 50% ABV back in the day up to 39 today is a big step. Some other companies decide to go even further than that and reduce into 20%, 15%, 60%. It doesn't matter, you know, this is their own choice.
I see.
We're fine.
So yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I think when I was researching Fernet as a category unto itself, I think I saw that they typically range 39 to 50. But to your point, people can obviously get a little more playful. And so
yeah, for sure.
And so people that know Fernet that know Branca in particular know it as this uh, big, bold, bitter elixir. And it was, to your point, from the pharmaceutical end, it was, if my research is correct, so it was originally introduced to kind of spur the appetite in people who might have been suffering from cholera, who needed to eat and rehydrate. So that was kind of the origin of the recipe. Is that correct? And then from there, it kind of began working its way into the Italian kind of day-to-day diet.
Yes, we can say that that was something that made Fernet Branca, the Fernet from Branca, be known to the massive consumer panel, like audience, I would say, in Italy. Fernet Branca was, yes, used and advised to be used during the cholera epidemic, specifically for the reason, stimulate the appetite, but also like kind of like it was good for your stomach, for your spleen, and so forth. So it was kind of used for that reason.
Mhm.
Let's not forget that Fernet Branca was a family secret recipe, and people were using that even before cholera. You know, the Branca family had this recipe in their hand far behind when that happened. And so it was like so it was used for everything. It was used as a panacea remedy for everything. You know, before the meal, after the meal, people were going to the Branca family house and were actually requesting some of this elixir. It was called like the Branca elixir because it was good for everything. It was good for the headache. It was good for stomach ache. So it was had a wider range of use. Became famous and known to the higher, like the larger amount of people within Italy, specifically though for this reason. There was something that kind of was the only thing working against the side effect of cholera, which was no eating at all and coughing and feeling sick and no recovering from the fever. So Fernet Branca was kind of making the body and people reacting positively to it. So some doctors started, advising to have like a small dosage every day of Fernet Branca, especially for this reason. I'll tell you something, right? My grandma, even still today, if you go to her house and you had a big lunch or you don't feel well, before anything else, she tells you, have some Fernet Branca. If it doesn't work, we take some medicine. So she really advised you on that. This was like, it's an old thing. It is an old people thing. Herb and spices, especially bitterness. We always believe, and this is a right belief, that bitterness in general are good for us. And somehow it's true. Every country, every people, and every I would say people in places in the world, there's a connection between bitterness and cleaning your body. I remember my grandma after like Christmas, after the Christmas, like big lunches, or having like the day after, we were having bitter salad and bitter spices, just to feel less guilty maybe, or just really to clean our body. So there's always been a connection between bitterness and spices and herbs and purifying and making your body recover. So
Yeah, and to the growth, and thank you for clarifying all this. I did my research, and clearly there's layers of it, like wow, existing even before that. So thank you. But now, like I'm marveling at, because I certainly see that the levels that Branca seems to have ascended to, but like the things so one, to see that you're in, I don't know, roughly 160 countries. But if I saw this stat correct, it said something about that, I guess Branca maybe uses like 15, 17% ish of the world's saffron, which is like when you're charting on a global level, that speaks to some serious production of product right there.
Yeah, this thing has been going on since I joined the company 13 years ago. They say that we're using 75% of the worldwide production of saffron, which is not really true on that. I mean, we use a lot of saffron.
Okay.
We use a lot of saffron, and that saffron is specifically used for alcoholic beverages like extraction, because is a specific type of saffron that kind of like tolerates that kind of extraction and all kind of process. I cannot really say the number. I know by fact that every time I'm in Milano, live in Milano, the factory is in Milano, I know there's a lot of kilos of saffron infusing in our factory. So I know I use a lot. Can I say 75%? I don't know how much is the total percent of production of saffron worldwide. I know we provided saffron from Middle East countries, so this is the best saffron in the world. But I come from Sardinia, and we produce saffron in Sardinia too, but it's mainly used for local food, to make like risotto, to have like making a powder for food colorant and food preparation. So I cannot really like say that for sure.
Sure. Okay. You know what? And me trying to lean on everything you read on the internet, it's usually a bad call. But
No, no. I mean, and honestly, it's interesting because those are information that got lost a little bit, and you cannot really be precise on that. But it's interesting to see there is an interest by people on this type of thing, which means that people are more interested into the history, but also in the production and the quality, and know where things are coming from. And this is very important when people have that type of interest. The people are bringing consciousness on what they're doing, what they're eating, and how they're doing. And for a company like us, that we really provide that as a guarantee of quality is important, which means that we are doing things properly. That's why we are still in the market after 200 years, because we never disappoint people on the search of quality. And I always say that if the path that you're pursuing is a path of quality, sooner or later you will meet Fernet Branca and Fernet Branca products.
Yeah. So meeting Fernet Branca. So for people that have tried it or have seen it, how is it? Obviously, in many cases, it could be enjoyed neat, but what are some of the most common ways, around the world you see people enjoying this product?
I like the fact that you call it product. It is a product. It's not an ingredient, which means that it's ready as it is. It's ready to be drink as it is. Mostly, it's consumed neat because it wasn't meant to be a bitter for cocktails. So when Fernet Branca was created, Bernardino Branca wasn't really thinking about the Coleman at the Savoy Hotel making like an Hanky Panky. So it was really, it was a product. So mainly its consumption, of course, is like after a meal, is a digestive, or Fernet Branca has digestive properties, but also as an aperitivo like quality, makes it stimulates your appetite. So it really depends when you drink it and how you drink it. If you drink it neat after a meal, which is like sipping or have a shot, has a great digestive properties. But if you drink it before the meal and allow in some dilution with some soda or some soft drinks or some ice, or some coffee maybe, has like an aperitivo like quality, stimulates your appetite. So it has this duality role. I like the versatility of the product, which means that you can not only, it's not versatile on how you can use it, but also when you can drink it. So this is it's a great quality. Mainly, I would say that is like Fernet and cola is the driver in the South America, especially in Argentina. So people drink Fernet with cola. It's a national drink. So whenever you go in Argentina, in every bar, if it's a 5-star hotel or the most remote bar in Mendoza, you actually get a Fernet and cola. It's the national drink, which is a case on its side. We do like more than 40 million liters of Fernet Branca with cola in Argentina, where we have a factory producing Fernet Branca there. Everywhere else in the world is kind of like you have the bartender community, which is like a worldwide bartender community nowadays is the bartender handshake. So bartenders having shot of Fernet Branca has a sign of recognition of belonging to the same category, of the same group. So like the hospitality people. So it's the bartender, is the hospitality shot. Mainly consumer-wise, wood-wise, is an after dinner. It's a digestive, it's like after a meal, and this is how it's merely consumed. With some like places like the Nordics, I would say Sweden, Norway, Denmark area, where there's actually a snack in the overnight. So they actually have it with a beer and a shot of Fernet Branca, shot of Fernet Branca, which is a really big market for us. But we know by fact that like especially like Denmark and Finland and Sweden and Norway, they have a big connection with bitters. So there's actually the palate is well connected with bitters. So this is what they drink mainly. But mainly, I would say it's neat. Yeah, neat is the thing. And then we have in the cocktail culture, we have some cocktails like back in the day, and still today, bartender experimenting making cocktails with Fernet Branca. Starting from the 1897, I think the first cocktail appearance with Fernet Branca has a brand mentioned in the book. It was called, I think, La Petite. Then we had the L'Aperitif Italien. Then we have the Savoy Book Hotel with many cocktails with Fernet Branca from the I Pick Me Up, and then of course the Hanky Panky and so forth. So we had so many appearances on cocktail books of Fernet Branca mentioned as ingredient for some certain cocktails. So mainly it kind of maintains this duality of a product. Could be like it is a bitter, in all effect it is a bitter, but also is like a fantastic product on its own.
Yeah, the mark of a great product, and one of the reasons I was excited to have this conversation is when a product almost seems to take on a life of its own, and the organic life that seems to exist in the bartender community for Branca is really it is very impressive. And has the company, because again, I gather it may have started more organically, but do you know how this began as this bartender's handshake, or is it kind of an unknown, lost in time?
Well, I have some theories there. Things never start for just one reason. But there's a spark that starts fire, of course. I have few speculation on that, if you allow me that, as some theory. I know by fact that everything started in the West Coast, in San Francisco area, where we had like very good people working from Branca back in the time that were promoting Fernet Branca within the bartender industry. But that was because they saw something happening within the bartender industry, within the cocktail industry of bartending, having shot of Fernet Branca. So somehow we put our attention into that, and we try to push it a little bit, try to support it a little bit more, that community back in the day in San Francisco, and then it spread all over the country. One of my speculations is that something, for me, I know that Amari and vermouth in general, they had a dark age in the hospitality industry, back in the day, like we would say between the 80s and the 90s, were forgotten product. Nobody was drinking Amari, nobody was using vermouth, nobody was using this type of product. They were sitting there in the bar forever. So I kind of thought that because nobody was putting their attention to those products, you could actually, as a bartender, as a person, you could offer them to your fellow colleagues without nobody telling you off. In a way, nobody was checking the stock on those products. So you can actually have that thing. I've been a bartender, I know how it works. You go to a bar and the bartender gives you a shot for free, and when it comes to your bar, you give them a shot for free and go on. Life goes on. And those were the products back in the day nobody was really caring about. I remember being a bartender, my manager forced us to weight all the bottles every weekend, so to know how much product we were selling, how many cocktails we were making, and so forth. And the only product we're not checking was those bottles of Amari and vermouth sitting on top of a coffee machine forever. So that was the only thing we could actually offer without nobody telling us off or checking on our stock. somehow maybe this became something, but because Fernet Branca was like, I managed to emerge within all these crowded products because of this complexity. It kind of like they were doing like natural sampling of a product, and that is it became that because it's not easy to drink Fernet Branca. It's an acquired taste. We know it needs
Right.
an effort. It needs attention. Because not everybody can do it. It's something that when you acquire and you know to do it, it makes you feel different. It makes you that you own that drink. You own that experience. I was reading like an interview back in the day of a very famous American chef. I don't remember the name, but it was on the Times. And he was talking about his experience of traveling all over the world and doing TV programs. And apparently, doing those TV programs, they make him try some weird food from wherever he was traveling to. And I remember he said he was in Asia, somewhere in Asia, and during the TV program, they make him try some very bitter, very, very bitter melon. I don't remember what it was. And he said that during the interview, he was eating this melon, but of course, he couldn't show that it was like really, really awful.
Yeah.
And he said that while having that melon, the melon really became more palatable. Okay. But what it feels like bitter in the beginning, it feels like pride at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of like, this is what I explain in my own head, the experience of drinking Fernet Branca, it's kind of something that you acquire once you manage it, once you own the flavor, once you know you can take it and you can manage it, you can put aside all the edges and you can just feel that the qualities. It's something that you don't want to lose that experience. You don't want to lose the capability. And this is kind of like happens in everything that we do in our life when we acquire something different, complex, and then we can enjoy just the pleasure of it. I always say that Fernet Branca is like the truth. Nobody likes the truth. But once you get the truth, you just want the truth. Once you upgrade yourself to a self-level conscious of appreciation, you either stay at the level or you grow, but you don't go back. And this is what happened with Fernet Branca, in my opinion.
Well, I'll tell you what, the whole idea that they weren't weighing the bottles. I want that to be true so bad, and it being like, well, hey, we're going to have whatever is available. But yeah, I think in general, there's a great metaphor in life for this idea of when you endure something hard. And yes, like the first taste of Branca, much like I've heard people say regarding a lot of Italian sherries, it's not love at first taste. And it is really an acquired thing. And so there is something to cheersing and being a part of a club that's enjoying something that isn't always easy to enjoy at first. So that makes a lot of sense.
The most famous unknown club of the world.
That's right. As I've definitely seen you, heard you spout that one off before. So to the uninitiated of Branca, tell us quickly about Fernet coins and how do we all try to track down our first one, assuming we're not collecting them yet?
Well, one of the first rules of Fernet coins is you don't ask for Fernet coins. So this is something that I say, but you get donated, at some point happening, you receive one. And it doesn't matter. I mean, there are different occasions. Sometimes you get a Fernet coin because you participate to an event and you stay there and you learn everything about the brand and you drink the Fernet Branca. And then because you are a Fernet Branca fan or you are at the event because you've been invited to an event, so maybe there's a chance you get a coin. Sometimes you get a coin from me or from our brand ambassador. Sometimes I call them the Fernet coin moments.
Okay.
Of people knowing about the coins but never asking for it because they know it will arrive. I remember once I did a seminar. I was in Milano. I did a seminar to a group of bartenders, young bartenders. And after a couple of days, I was hanging in the bar with some guests, and I saw one of the guy coming to the seminar by himself, going to the bar. He didn't see me, so he wasn't there. For him, I wasn't there. Going to the bar and asking a glass of Fernet Branca to the bartender, taking the glass, going to a chair, reading a book, and drinking Fernet Branca. I went there. I said, "This is a coin for you." It was over the moon. He didn't expect that. Sorry, but he got a coin because he made a choice on his own time, on his spare time, to drink Fernet Branca because he likes it, because he appreciates the liquid. So sometimes it's not a matter of how many cases you sell, how many liters you made, how many tattoo you have. Is you expressing the appreciation for the liquid within your own potential, with your own maximal potential. That was his free time. That was his free day. He could have chosen anything else, and he chose Fernet Branca because he likes the liquid. And then for me, that is the person that deserve a coin. So I went there and I gave him a coin and said, "Okay, you're part of the family. You're a part of the people that respect and appreciate the liquid. So you need to have a coin in your pocket."
Got it. That's great. I love it. I love that the company kind of took that leap. Again, driving home this most famous unknown club is pretty awesome. So
Yeah, I love the demographic of people around me with the Fernet Branca community. I love it. When we all diverse, we're all different, but we have in common this thing. We can drink Fernet Branca and we like it. And that say to me that we are people that doesn't matter how bitter it is, doesn't matter how hard it is, we overcome the prejudice of this and we just take the best. And this, I think, is an approach that these people, as people that we drink Fernet Branca, we have generally in our life on anything happen to us. And I love that. And I proved that. I've been doing this job for 13 years, and all the people that I've met that love Fernet Branca and they respect Fernet Branca and they drink Fernet Branca as a product, that have this characteristic of being people that have this thing more. So that's why I'm still doing this job today.
Mm-hmm. So while today is the first time we've really technically met at Tales of the Cocktail this year, I got to hear you do a presentation, and you were talking about that, we're fortunate now in a country like America to have even things like T-shirts and magnets that say, "Hey, if you're reading this, put your vermouth in the fridge." Now, in a place like Italy, and all this is so we can get to talking about Carpano Antica a little bit, but I think you said you were talking with the production staff about does Carpano go bad? And they were like, "Well, I guess, but why would you ever have it around for that long?" So I guess my first question is, and I don't know how often you run into skunked, Carpano, but if someone is listening to this, because I meet people every day who are really still unsure what they should be doing with their vermouth. Like, if it's good stuff, you should just drink it. But do you have any leading indicators for what bad vermouth is going to taste like that's been open too long?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I like about vermouth and vermouth in general, that you do need to be an expert on vermouth to appreciate vermouth. Vermouth is a perfect balance between like a wine, sugar, and botanically infused herb and spices. So the same way you can like it and you can like appreciate it and drink it, you can actually tell if it's not good. I mean, once you drink it, there are no vermouth that taste weird or unpleasant. That vermouth should taste nice and balanced. So when you get this unbalanced flavor, like too much oxidation or too much of something, the vermouth kind of is going bad. Let's not forget the vermouth is 75% is wine. It's a white wine, it's Vino Fiore, so it's the first press of the wine, so it's very delicate, stabilized at 10% volume alcohol and pasteurized. So it really needs to be treated like a wine, preserving properly. And once you open it, try to finish as soon as you can. The question to the guy I remember is something that I always said, I never tired. because always people ask me if you need to keep your vermouth in the fridge. And in the beginning, when I asked this question to the production guy, they told me, yes, if you want to drink it cold. It was very clear for them. Yes, of course, if you drink, just stick it in the oven if you want it hot. The way that, for them there was no like a problem of the product going off, because for them, for Italian, like normal, like Italian consumer, once you open a bottle of vermouth, it just goes away like very, very fast. It's a wine, it's something that you enjoy. And especially you enjoy like cold, because it's a little bit sweet. So it's a white wine with some like caramel and burnt sugar in our case. And it needs to be a little bit cold so you can enjoy it better. Otherwise you have an overpowering flavors of bitterness and there's no balance. So you need that temperature to make it more pleasant and approachable. So for them it was normal, yes, put it in the fridge because it's better if you drink it cold. It's not because it goes off. So that was the point for them. And the thing that I always get often asked was that how long a bottle of Antica would last once open. Like, would it last more than 3 months? And I say it could last more than 3 months, but if you have a bottle of Antica open for 3 months in your fridge, close the bar and open a pizzeria. So this is my advice was, and I make like a point here, is the fact that vermouth belongs to your bar program. Vermouth belongs to your menu cocktail program. You either believe in your vermouth or you don't. I mean, the vermouth are tools to work with, no fancy product to have in your bar top. And don't take me wrong, I'm a geek too. I like to have the strange little things. When I go to market and I see those guys with a microphone selling weird objects for the kitchen, I buy everything. Have like a lemon squeezer that you screw into the lemon and you just like spray the lemon all over. I have those weird knives that cut like even like a brick, and the shoes that you can cut your salmon with that. I buy everything, but at the end of the day, I'm going to use always the same knife and always the same chopping board, always the same tools, because those are the tools that get the job done and I can rely on. You can have like thousands of products, but you're going to still use that rum to make your daiquiri. You're going to use that vermouth to make your Negroni, and you're going to use that, whatever, whiskey to make your Manhattan, because those are the tools that get the job done. Simple as that.
To kind of just paint like the spectrum that can exist in vermouth. So obviously we have Antica, which to my understanding is probably the first vermouth that it was created, for a king of Italy. Is that, did I remember that correctly?
Yes. Antonio Benedetto Carpano in 1782 created the product that today we call vermouth. He patented a liquid that today we call vermouth, and back in the day it was called the Carpano because the category didn't exist. And it was a fortified wine coming from a tradition of artemitic wines, therapeutical wines infused like with the artemisia mainly, but unpleasant and not totally drinkable. He then took this old recipe of medicinal wine, combining with this knowledge of medicine, because it was coming from Biella, but it was working in Torino, where it was like a patisserie tradition, very interesting, and liquor making very interesting, so availability of sugar. And he mixed and matched the two traditions, the liquoristic tradition and the medicinal tradition, putting together, created this fantastic product that today we call vermouth. He was 21 years old. In his spare time, while he was working, he was messing around with the herbs and spices, measuring exactly the right amount and adding spices to herbal extract, created this fantastic bouquet of flavors and using the wine as a container. And the first production of the vermouth apparently was presented by a duke in Torino and brought from this duke to the King of Italy. The royal palace was just actually in front of the Carpano, the Menegali shop, which was the first shop where Carpano was working. So he got rid of this bottle. He tried, and he was impressed by the quality and impressed by the fragrance, and he fell in love with this very nice product. It was also a therapeutical product because the vermouth, it was good, neat, but also still maintained the characteristic of a digestive and good for your body with the herb and spices and bitterness. So it was, suddenly it was love at first sight with the Carpano and the King Amadeo III in Torino. And once you have like a sponsor like the king, of course, the success is kind of secure. He declared the Carpano, the vermouth and the Carpano, of course, being the aperitivo of the royal palace. And then from the royal palace went down to all the aristocratic endorsement around him. And then from that, everybody in Torino started drinking the vermouth. For many reasons, because of the quality, but also because it was the first real Italian product that could stand next to foreign products, like very popular at the time, for very few people, like port, Madeira, or the wine, sherry, and so forth. And vermouth was the first very product that could fill the gap of a very complex and nice and pleasant, sophisticated liquor that people could drink and being available.
Uh-huh. So because like with, 75% of vermouth is wine, there's a spectrum on wine flavor. There's clearly a spectrum on vermouth flavor. So Nicola, I don't know if something like Antica versus Puntames is a great example, but if someone was tasting two of your guys' sweet vermouths, what are some of the different flavors they might, or texture, et cetera, they might find in one versus the other, just to understand the spectrum of flavor that's out there?
Yeah, I mean, vermouth should taste like vermouth.
Okay.
So it's not like a wine profile that really you can identify in the vermouth. So you can tell that it's wine because you get this minerality, acidity, winey flavor, but you cannot really tell which wine is that.
Sure.
And this is something really important to say because today you have some vermouth producer that actually they are characterizing their vermouth according to the wine. So those are wine-driven vermouth. And I'm not saying that doing that because they don't know how to make real vermouth. It's just a choice.
Sure.
But vermouth should taste like vermouth. It's not
Okay.
like vermouth should taste like this wine or that botanical or that alcohol content. Vermouth should taste like vermouth. And 75 is a big, of course, chunk of proportion within the bottle. Still, the wine doesn't have to affect the flavor. The wine there is a container. It contains and is there to maintain and collect all that nice and interesting complexity coming from spices and herbs and roots and barks all together. When the wine maintains that, maintains that well balanced and not overpowering the drink itself. So you can still get the nice acidity, as I said, the minerality, this nice wine the wine is something really common to us. It's approachable because there's some familiarity with wines. Everybody drank wine in Italy at some point. So this is something that we recognize and it is very easy for us to approach. So the wine is there also to make this drinking experience as approachable as possible. Now, Antica Formula versus Puntames, we are talking about two different sports here. We are falling to still the Italian sweet vermouth, where you have Antica Formula, the old recipe, which is the closest thing that you can drink today to the first vermouth ever created by Antonio Benedetto Carpano in 1786. So this is a time machine. Drinking Antica Formula is drinking time. You're drinking experience and you're drinking time. So you have this nice vanilla flavor, some spices, some cloves, some incense and matches and saffron. So this old complexity. Today is like Antica Formula is like the benchmark or reference on how vermouth should taste like today. So everybody making vermouth is aiming at Antica Formula, just have as a goal to reach. And which is kind of impossible, of course, because of the uniqueness and the way we make it is so complex, it's so hard to replicate. but it is the perfect expression of a vermouth. Antica formula is the perfect execution of a very complex exercise, which is the exercise of making vermouth. Okay. And then you have Punta Mes. Well, Punta Mes, we have to understand where Punta Mes is coming from and why Punta Mes is Punta Mes, the origin of the product. Because Punta Mes was born as a product because there was a trend in Torino at some point, like in 1830, 1840, of people drinking vermouth as an aperitif, of course, but willing to have a more complex and depth and bitter experience. So the bars were adding bitters to the existing vermouth on the bottle. So there was a trend of making like the first appearance of cocktails. Can we say that? A vermouth is a cocktail on its own. You have the bitter, you have the alcohol, and you have the wine. The complexity is a cocktail in the bottle. And Punta Mes was born because of this trend, and Carpano decided to recreate this trend within the bottle, so it was ready for everybody to appreciate a different style of vermouth. So in a way, that Punta Mes is a different style of vermouth, which has a bitter edge with a more wormwood, more quina and cinchona bark extract, and some other like roots and botanicals that make the drinking experience of Punta Mes a little bit more complex and diversified from Antica formula.
Well, first, thank you for helping me clarify my thinking, because you're right. In my basic understanding of vermouth, it is certainly usually calling on for a more neutral wine. And then obviously we are adding flavor, spices, botanicals. But this idea of the wine as the vessel that we are flavoring is a great reminder of the distinction of how I should talk about vermouth. So thank you for that. And for both of those descriptions in terms of how Punta Mes came into being right there. That's helpful. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So I have one or two other things in mind, but Nicola, is there anything on your end of things we haven't covered that you'd love to chat about it all today?
I mean, if you ask me, I can talk for hours. I can really. That could be like a second season podcast. We can go on forever.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we are squeezing like 177 years of history in Fratelli Branca distillery plus 237 years of history of Carpano. So it's like really like 500 years almost of history within like a half an hour. But there are many things, I think one thing we have to understand, especially about vermouth, and this came out last night that I had a fantastic dinner here in New York with a nice fellow bartenders, we tend to overcomplicate everything, and also on vermouth. And I think this is a mistake we should not do. Vermouth was created for people, to give the chance to people to go out and drink something easy and approachable. I don't want to overcomplicate. Let's not overcomplicate a category that is simple as it is, because we might risk to scare consumer. We want them to, instead of approach the vermouth category and make them feel they can do it easily, and they don't have to be. It's not a complex thing to do. And last night, this is something really emerged on that. Vermouth should be drink neat. I always advise people, have a good vermouth in your bar, open it and serve it neat. Give it like a general dosage, like 8 ml or whatever you think is appropriate, with some ice and soda, and maybe some flavored soda, and just changing the spec on top of the glass makes it different. Maybe have some bergamotto peel or some orange or whatever, some pineapple, whatever. So you just need like these two elements. You have a fantastic drink in front of you, and people can enjoy and have a fantastic aperitivo experience. So let's not overcomplicate a vermouth that is already complicated. The recipe, the ingredients, the botanical groups, and how the botanical group act within the vermouth is a very complex, a complicated exercise. But what we have at the end is this simplicity and a very approachable drink. It's like I always compare vermouth, and especially Antica formula, to gymnastic on TV. When you see those girls or guys making amazing evolution in front of you, like front flip, back flip, and they look so easy. They make it look so easy in a way that you think you can do the same. Of course, if you try, you break your neck. So this is the same thing. It's a perfect execution. What is in front of you is a perfect harmonic execution, so well made, so perfectly executed, that it looks easy. This is the vermouth. Okay. Behind that, there are years of trials, failures, success. But that moment for you, the delivery, just the quality. This is what we do. We deliver only the perfection in a glass, so you don't have to think about anything else, just to enjoy the moment. And your body just receives this, and it's just pleased by himself by drinking this product. So this is what is vermouth for me. So just enjoy, just not overcomplicate it, and try as many vermouth as possible. If I can give an advice to people listening to your podcast, try as many vermouth as possible. Find a vermouth that is good for you and then get the job done. The vermouth calls the drink. It's not the other way around. It's not the drink calls the vermouth. So choosing the right vermouth, always choose the right drink for that.
It does feel like a great place to end in terms of also coming full circle to your comment about excellence. There is the time that has been in love that has been invested in perfecting and continuing to master these products and to not overcomplicate them, because they're already, as they should be in the bottle. And so, yeah, I think it's fun to see the rise of cocktail culture that we have, but at times some things are just ready to go as is. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay. Well, you know what, Nicola, this has been great. Thank you for joining me. And to this point, I need to dig more into the 500 plus years of total history, and hopefully one day we can do it again. So thanks again for taking the time.
Plenty things to talk about it. Plenty things.
Indeed.
Well, thank you. Thank you all listening today as well.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. The show notes for today's episode are available at decodingcocktails.com/podcast. If you'd like to keep up with what we're working on, there are two great ways to do so. One, our short weekly newsletter, Cocktail Confidential, which you can sign up for at decodingcocktails.com/newsletter. Or give us a follow on Instagram at Decoding Cocktails. If you think this podcast is great stuff, we'd love it if you'd subscribe or, of course, share an episode with a friend. The Decoding Cocktails podcast is produced by Chris Bay and myself. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again soon, and happy cocktailing.